Hello, I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series that delves into the world of financial services and brings you face to face with some of the most notable figures in the industry. Listen as we discuss topics that are currently facing the industry and hear from visionary CEOs to disruptive innovators as we bring you a diverse array of voices and perspectives. We'll explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they have to share about the ever-evolving landscape of financial services.
Hello, I'm Lois Vallely, Chief Reporter at Money Marketing, and today I am joined by Tom Hegarty, who is Managing Director of M&G Wealth Advice. Hi Tom, it's great to have you on the podcast. How are things with you?
Hi Lois, yeah, all very good, thanks.
Excellent. So maybe before we get into our conversation today, you could start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your role, and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. My current role is Managing Director of M&G Wealth Advice, as you mentioned. That is responsible for just over 270 financial advisors within our business as a appointed representative model. And that's I've been running since the year 2000, where we started that business, which prior to that was an employed advice business. And then we created an academy as well in 2021. And we've now got over 200 individuals working their way through their journey to become experienced financial advisors at the moment as well. So just in terms of my past, I actually started out in financial services back in the late 90s as an advisor, a self-employed advisor with a company called City Financial Partners, who many people who are in the industry still now might remember. And I worked for a period of couple of years as an advisor there, and then I actually, due to various circumstances, I moved back to away back from London back to South Manchester, where I live. And then I started a career with Friends Provident, which I was there for about 8 years doing various different roles. Moved to Tenet Group, and then the new model Business Academy as part of Simply Biz, and then joined Prudential Financial Planning at the time, which is now M&G Wealth Advice, back in 2019. So yeah, that's my history. So various different roles, really, from advice through to working with appointed reps. Always been working with financial advisors though, and supporting financial advisors on their journey. So been a really interesting journey. I think the other things outside of M&G Wealth Advice as well, I've been involved recently in a couple of other quite large initiatives which are to do with new talent as well. One of them is that I'm the Trailblazer Chair for apprenticeships in financial advice, paraplanning, and financial services administration as well. So what we have to do every few years is revise the standards. We can come on to that, I'm sure, in due course. And then also recently, earlier this year, I was asked to chair as a role of chairing a collaboration called the New Talent Alliance, which is really an initiative to support the wider Consumer Duty Alliance and aiming to bring more talent into the advice sector. And I guess the reason I'm involved in these additional things is partly because of my, experience in working in these various different areas around things like apprenticeships and training and development and academies. But I'm actually just really passionate about financial advice, the sector we work in, and I want the sector to thrive. And I want to have a long-term future and to be able to provide great advice to consumers and give them the advice that they need.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So yes, as you say, we're probably going to delve into a few more of those things in a bit more detail later on. But first of all, maybe it would be helpful to sort of summarize what the issue is. And also, I'd quite like to start off, if you don't mind, just asking you what exactly you mean by the advice gap and the advisor gap, because I know there's some sort of varying definitions on exactly what they are, and not every advisor believes that there is an advice gap and things like that. So do you mind just sort of saying how you view the advice gap?
Yeah, good question. I think if you look at data, it's difficult to find it all now, but if you look at some reports and do a bit of Googling, you'll find that there were far more advisors in the sector than a few decades ago. So 1980s and prior to that, there were at least over 200,000, some say more like 250, 300,000 financial advisors in the UK, all offering advice services to clients. Historically, as well as that number of advisors, each advisor used to look after a considerably higher number of clients, because there wasn't such a requirement to provide so many kind of touch points and interactions with those clients. They could sit as kind of transactional clients in the background and not necessarily have a great deal of engagement with an advisor until the point that they needed, some sort of advice event. So not only were there a lot more advisors than there are today in the past, there was also this higher number of clients per advisor. So what that means is that with the various changes, I won't go into all the reasons, because you could point at things like regulation, cost, and the economy, and various political. You could look at all different reasons for why we've got to where we've got to. But the kind of cold facts are that we've got now just over 30,000 financial advisors in the UK, whereas we did have this 200,000+. And each of those advisors now don't seem to look after and have as many clients that they work with as they used to as well. So effectively, we've got a situation where less consumers are actually benefiting from advice services that our sector provides. So consumers are the ones that are affected by the advice gap, and it means that there aren't as many people receiving advice as they could. Just in terms of Prudential alone, I think back years and years ago, Prudential had sort of 10,000 financial advisors itself, just that business. So it's considerably changed over the years. And we've seen that in recent reports as well. So one of the reports that many in our sector will be aware of is the one that is produced by the Lancat, and they updated their report in July this year, where one of their headlines was only 9% of consumers in the UK actually paid for advice in the last 2 years, which is actually down even further from 11% in the previous year. So it does appear from reports like that the advice gap is seemingly getting wider. But yeah, to answer your question, the way I define the advice gap is really around the number of individuals who are benefiting in the UK from financial advice and the services we provide, very valuable services. So the more we can do to actually improve and increase accessibility to consumers with financial advice services, the better.
Definitely. And I suppose there's a difference between like full fat financial advice, which is paid for on a fee basis, I suppose, and if you just need like a bit of guidance or something. Do you see the Financial Conduct Authority's advice guidance boundary review is going to be helping with that?
I think my answer to that would be that we'll wait and see. We've been through some different situations like this before, where we've hoped that we can look at different types of advice and different and guidance and different options and the way that we can support consumers. And at the moment, it is fairly narrow in terms of what we can do, and that's because there is this, they call it the advice guidance boundary for a reason, which is that it's quite difficult for clients and consumers to understand the difference between advice and guidance. So I think my answer would be that let's wait and see. We hopefully should be hearing more on the report that the FCA are due to produce over the next few weeks, we hope. And yeah, I think we'll wait and see as a business as well to see if there is anything that we can help with as a business as well. But let's see if there is something that can benefit consumers and provide more options to businesses to support consumers with their financial needs.
Yeah, definitely. I had never heard that 300,000 figure. I'm surprised there used to be that many advisors. That's amazing. And now there's about 10% of that. So I suppose that's one of the issues causing the advice gap. And I know that I can't remember what the exact figure is, but a ridiculous number of advisors going to be retiring in the next 5 years, or I think it's the next 5 years. Then not really enough people coming in to replace them. So I know that's obviously something you're very passionate about with all your work on the academy and the apprenticeships and everything. Could you maybe start off talking a bit more about what you see as the best way that we can get more people interested in joining the profession, and then we can talk a bit more about what's being done?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of those figures that you talked about and people retiring, a lot of that is, their estimates from various commentators. We currently have just over 31,000 advisors in the UK providing, regulated investment advice, and that number is likely to diminish with the age demographic that we currently see. So again, depending on which sources of data you look at, it's fairly clear that the average age of financial advisors in the UK is kind of mid to late 50s, and that hasn't changed substantially in the last few years. So if you work out very obvious number crunching, if the average age of retirement is sort of 65, it means that half of that population are going to retire within the next 10 years. So 15,000 retire in the next 10 years, half that, 7,500 in the next 5 years. It's that sort of number. It's no point in giving an exact one because we really don't know, but we are going to see advisors retiring. And in fact, the latest data from the FCA, which was recently disclosed from, I think it was from August 2022 to February 2024, the number of advisors seem to have stayed roughly the same, but the number of firms has reduced quite substantially by about 400, so 6,240 to 5,805. So what that does indicate is that there is some consolidation taking place within the sector. And it means that what we are actually now starting to see the effects of this. So even though this number the number of advisors hasn't reduced over that kind of time period, we do expect that will start reducing over the coming years. And the worry then is that we see an increase in the number of advisors retiring or leaving, and we don't replenish we don't bring in enough new advisors to replenish that number. So at the moment, most of the new advisors come into the sector through the larger academies, and probably fewer come in through smaller advice firms. And of course, we are a sector that has diversity in terms of size of firms. We have lots of small firms, we have independent firms, restricted firms, directly authorized firms, networks, and so overall we need to try and help all firms to recruit new to find and source new talent, and then help recruit them, train and develop them, and manage and retain that talent within the sector. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
The question?
Yeah, definitely. Why is it? I know we don't want to dwell on the past, but I think it's important to maybe talk a bit about why it is that financial advice hasn't been brought to the fore as a career as much as like accountancy or law or even journalism, things like that. Why is it? Because I know I was in school rather a long time ago now, but when I was back in school, it wasn't flagged up as a career option. And I'm pretty sure, like, I have little cousins who are sort of 10 to 15. I don't think it is really flagged up that much even now. So why is that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think your observation is spot on. I think it's something that we've talked about for years and years and years, which is why does it seem to be the case that professions like accountancy and law and other professions seem to be promoted to people at school, to students at schools or at universities or graduates. But financial advice isn't really promoted as much. Another one you could put in there is banking as well. That's another profession that seems to be that gathers traction and people are aware of. So I think my sort of opinion on it is there's probably not been one or more large firms to have promoted that. So in accountancy, for example, you used to have the large 4 or the large 6 accountancy firms who probably individually do their own bit and they raise the profile of accountancy as a profession. Despite they probably have, well, they do have their chartered professions as well. So the institutes that, for example, that would promote those careers as well. We probably haven't been able to do that. We've probably not had enough large firms who've had the resources and the budgets to promote careers in financial advice. But, it's a shame because it's such a great career path, and we should have more, we should be creating more awareness. I found out actually about careers in financial advice through a kind of a graduate handbook where it went through every different career that was there, and each kind of double page was sponsored. So you had an engineer and a dentist and various things, and they were all sponsored by a business. So it gave you an outline of what the career did, and that's how I found out about financial advice. But for people now, finding out about financial advice and understanding that it is not so straightforward. I don't think there are as many ways that people understand that. So I think that is one of the areas we've really got to tackle. And the only way I see that working is through collaboration. Of course, each business can get out and do their own careers fairs and sponsor a directory, a careers directory like I just referred to. But I think the real secret or the way to do that is really through joining into the profession and unifying together and doing some collaborative work to do that. And there are lots of initiatives that we're currently working on that are doing exactly that. And that's that first bit is that piece around awareness, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the New Talent Alliance earlier. Did you say your chair?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's do you want to talk a bit about that then? Because I don't know a huge amount about it. Obviously, I've read sort of about it and I wrote the initial news story, but I don't know a huge amount about it. It'd be good to hear from you.
I was asked, Keith Richards asked me to chair this back in towards the start of the year. And we set up the New Talent Alliance, I think it was March this year. And the idea was to bring in various stakeholders from the sector who are also passionate and keen on developing new talent and improving or increasing advisor numbers across the sector. So that group then comprises of some of the larger firms, some smaller IFA firms, all 3 of our kind of main professional bodies, so the CII, CISI, and LIBF, and then some training providers as well. So we've got quite a large steering group. But the point is, this is a group that is sector facing. What we want to do is engage with the whole wider advice population and advice community, and get them to get behind really the whole alliance, and with the aim of bringing new talent into the sector. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the new talent at the moment is purely coming through the academies, of which M&G Wealth Advice Academy is doing its bit, as are others. Mm-hmm. But I think if you go to smaller firms, for example, who might have a smaller number of advisors within their business or smaller resources, they don't necessarily have the expertise or experience or capability or resource to source talent and then know how to go through a recruitment process, then how to train and develop these individuals, and then how to manage and retain individuals and talent within their businesses as well. So what the New Talent Alliance is aiming to do is provide some resources and share some of the ongoing, not trying to recreate initiatives necessarily, but share some of the great work that's being done within the sector at the moment around things like sourcing talent, recruiting, training and developing, managing and retaining talent, which we have a lot of resource and intel and expertise on. and share that with all stakeholders, with all firms. So what we're actually doing is representing, well, all firms across the sector, regardless of size or the way they operate, and helping share with them some hints, tips, and good and best practice, really, or good practice in terms of being able to bring new people into their businesses. Now, I don't think at the moment what we don't want to do within the New Talent Alliance is go that one step further and start actually promoting the profession to potential talent directly, because that takes a huge amount of resource and effort. And of course, we don't have any budgets or any financial alignment to any organisation. It's simply just a collaboration. So we're not really resourced to do that. But I think if we can provide some best practice and hints and tips for the rest of the sector to do that, and to get behind some of the other initiatives within the sector, then I think that's all going to help.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other initiatives being, of course, Future Financial Advisor, which is in collaboration with Money Marketing. And I know M&G is one of our partners. So do you want to talk to us a bit about your involvement in that? It's a sort of, for those of you who don't know, by the way, it's a of community, I suppose, resource hub for anyone who likes the look of financial advice and maybe wants to come into the profession. And I believe it sort of is trying to shout about advice more to people who might not know about it as well, and try and encourage more people in. So do you want to maybe talk a bit about your involvement in that?
Yeah, so I think it's a great initiative. So the idea behind that was that there isn't really one main source where if somebody finds out, and reads something, or they find out about careers in advice somehow, which sometimes they do from a relative or a friend or somebody that they know, or word of mouth or something they've read on the internet. They don't really know where to go to find out more information about what's involved. What does it look like? How long does it take to get trained? What's involved in that? What's the career options, in terms of running their own business or being an employed advisor, whatever it would be. There's no real one source of information that's independent or agnostic, that isn't doesn't have, I guess, doesn't come from a large business itself. So this is a collaboration where we've got there are 3 or 4 firms who have actually provided some budget to get this up and running, because there are some costs involved, and that's the reason for it. But there's no commercial alignment with those kind of sponsors of that necessarily, apart from the fact that it's getting this up and running, so that all of the for the benefit of the wider sector. Now, the Future Financial Advisor is potential candidate facing, or for actually trying to source new talent. So the website is there for people to go on and find out more about careers in advice, and hopefully over time we'll be creating more outgoing mechanisms. So getting involved in careers fairs and creating newsletters that can go out to schools and universities and even second careerists, so we can really sort of drum up interest in coming and working in the financial advice profession. So it's a great initiative, and again, a great collaboration. And again, going back to the New Talent Alliance, rather than the New Talent Alliance trying to do that itself as well, and not being resourced to do that, we would flag or refer or signpost the Future Financial Advisor Initiative and others which are happening as well, which help to raise awareness of careers in advice as well. So that's an ongoing project. It's still fairly early days, even though we've been up and running for a good number of months now. But it's something that, again, other businesses as well as those who are sponsoring can really get behind and support and raise awareness right across the sector.
Brilliant. And just to give a little plug for those of you who are interested, it's futurefinancialadvisor.co.uk. So go and check that out. I know, so you've spoken quite a bit about academies and the fact that academies are how most advisors get into the profession at the moment. I know you're passionate about apprenticeships as well. So, and as you mentioned earlier, you're Trailblazer chair for the apprenticeships. Well, chair of the apprenticeships Trailblazer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, do you want to, maybe talk a bit about why you think apprenticeships are a good way in too?
Yeah. So apprenticeships have existed for a long time. What I'm talking about here is government-funded apprenticeships, which have been revamped within the last 10 years. I will mention as well, though, that I know this broadcast will probably go out to across the UK, but apprenticeships are a devolved policy. So it's a challenge in a way that all in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, the terms are slightly different. So we don't have at the moment apprenticeships anywhere except England, and actually the process behind them are all slightly different as well in terms of the funding and the mechanisms. But apprenticeships, in terms of government-funded apprenticeships, are something fairly new to financial services, to financial advice. So there was a financial advice apprenticeship was created in, I think, 2016, and a paraplanning apprenticeship slightly before that, I think 2015. And effectively what we call it an apprenticeship standard. Apprenticeship standard is really a syllabus. It's a list of competencies and a program, a training program, to get somebody to become a trained and competent financial advisor. Although I say competent, it doesn't take somebody through the regulatory process. It gets somebody through the full training prior to going through competent advisor status training. And the standards that were created back in 2015 and 2016 need to be revised every few years. So I was invited about 3 years ago to chair the updated Trailblazer group. So what we had to do is pull together a group of people who were representative employers across the sector, training providers, professional bodies, and what's called endpoint assessors. Bring all those stakeholders together and go through the way that the apprenticeship program or standard had been operating. Now, there have been some issues with this in the past, which is that the apprenticeship was set up in a way that you could drop out part way through, and there wouldn't be really any sort of consequence. So an employer would put one of their trainees onto the apprenticeship program, and many times what would happen was the apprentice would go through the training, complete all their exam qualifications, and then actually drop out of the process. Now, the problem with that is the completion rates were really quite low, and when the completion rates are below 60%. The Institute for Apprenticeships looks at that in a slightly, unfavourable way, and they might get to the point where they say, "Look, the completion rates are so low that we can't continue with this." So, what we've aimed to do with the recent Trailblazer group is revamp that apprenticeship standard and make it so that it does have some more incentives around. Going all the way through the process of training, and not just qualifications. Of course, qualifications help, and they need to be done. They're mandatory qualifications, regulatory qualifications. But of course, the apprenticeship has far, far more than that around the knowledge, skill, and behavioural competencies that are trained into the individual, so that they, have a far wider learning experience and are far more competent at the end of the process. So we want to encourage people to not just enrol on an apprenticeship, but actually go all the way through the process and complete it. And I think there is a responsibility on any employer within our sector who enrolls somebody onto an apprenticeship program to do that as well, because if they don't and they pull somebody out of the apprenticeship early, it's not going to help the rest of the sector to support more talent. And let me just clarify, I didn't mention, but the real benefits of an apprenticeship is really around the training and development aspect of those areas that I mentioned earlier, recruitment, and it's the training and development parts. And where a firm doesn't really have the resource to train an individual through their qualifications and these other areas over and above qualifications, An apprenticeship's a great route to really outsource that training. So a training provider who is on the apprenticeships register can actually take ownership of that training and development program for an individual over usually an 18-month to 2-year period, go through all of the qualifications, all of the competencies, and actually the employer, the government funds the vast majority of that. It's actually 95% of the costs of doing that. So an employer at the moment would only pay 450 quid, but get £9,000 worth of training and development support for an individual within their business. Now, that might be somebody that's already working in their business, or they might recruit somebody, a talented individual, to go through that process. But it's a great deal and a great opportunity for employers to engage in apprenticeships and use apprenticeships and the funding that comes with it to get that individual to a point where they're ready to start going through the regulatory and the competent advisor, the supervision process, which is also a challenge. I know that's for smaller firms who don't have the capabilities around the supervision. We need to try and support that through the New Talent Alliance as well. But apprenticeships are a great option. So we're working on the revision of the financial advisor apprenticeship program and the paraplanning program, and we're actually merging them together into what we call a core and options approach. Okay. So we've got probably about 80% of the knowledge, skill, and behavioural competencies of a financial advisor and a paraplanner are the same. That's arguable, I guess, on different views of that. But I think overall, it wouldn't be a disbenefit for somebody who's going to be a paraplanner and a financial advisor to sit the same diploma level qualifications, for example. But then obviously the roles are slightly different. The advisor is clearly client facing and client interacting. The paraplanner can be as well, but usually the paraplanner would be more, back office functioning and technical, but also potentially have that communication directly with clients as well. So there is a very, very large crossover in terms of the skill set, but there is an element which is different. So the professions are different. So we've created this core and options approach where somebody would enroll onto the apprenticeship program, do 80% of the competencies which fit both of those roles, but choose which branch to go down at a later stage, which is if they want to become a paraplanner, they can go down that route, or a financial advisor, they go down the financial advisor route, and then would go through some additional learning and training and coaching and development to get them to that point. So hopefully we're going to get to the end of this and launch this within the next few months, and then we'll hopefully do a bit more publicity around how that will actually work and how employers can use it to support their talent within their businesses.
Brilliant. Yeah, I imagine that's probably quite a good thing for the apprentice, because they can do, as you said, 80% and then decide, rather than having to commit to a route before they start their training, I imagine.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's not necessary. It's like any profession. When somebody enters a profession, they've probably got an idea of what that might be like. But that when they start doing some of the work and the training towards that, they might find themselves a bit more inclined to one option more than another. And of course, both occupations or professions are very much valued within our sector. We need more paraplanners as well as we need financial advisors, and we're certainly seeing a trend within the market where we are seeing more businesses set up to have paraplanning and financial advice separated out. So yeah, absolutely, we need paraplanners as well as financial advisors.
Yeah, definitely. Great. I think we're probably coming to the end of our time, but I did just want to ask you one more thing before we close, if that's all right.
Of course.
Sorry if this drops you in it, but I wanted to ask if you could choose like one most urgent priority or change for the sector around what we've been talking about. Is there one that you would say is most urgent?
I could give you three rather than one.
3 is fine.
which is something that I think we which is important. I think number one, I think we need to accept and unify the profession more than we have been in the past. So I think it's important that we understand there are different shapes and sizes of advice firms and businesses, and the way that we deliver advice, there's lots of differences. But overall, we need more advice services to deliver so that consumers, have diversity of choice in terms of what they do, and we are offering more services to consumers. So I think we've got to make sure we join together and unify better as a profession than we have done in the past. So that's something we still need to work on. There's still work to do there. The second one for me is around professionalism, and we need to have and demonstrate and talk about integrity as a profession as well. So there have been instances in the past where our sector has been tarnished by bad publicity from bad practices. And I think we all have to take responsibility. Everybody within the sector has to take responsibility for real integrity. So if we're going to promote careers in advice to the next generation of talent, we need to be seen externally as a profession that does things right, that we care and we do things in the right way, and we have professional integrity in what we do. And I think the regulator is helping with that as well, with Consumer Duty, but it shouldn't need that. It should be that we can we can show integrity as a profession, and everybody in the profession is responsible for doing that and upholding standards. That's the point. And then the third one is really around advocacy. I think we don't probably shout enough about the good that we do as a sector. There is a bit of a taboo still that financial advisors are a little bit, there's a bit of embarrassment there or reluctance to shout about what financial advisors do. And I think we need more case studies of the brilliant work that financial advisors do, which we hear about quite a lot, but we probably don't promote enough. There are amazing examples out there of where financial advisors have absolutely changed people's lives substantially, and helped them meet their goals, aspirations, and objectives that they never thought they could. And so we should be shouting about that. So when financial advisors are asked what they do as a job, as a profession, they should have almost a bit of an elevator pitch, prepared to say, I do a brilliant role as a financial advisor. This is what we do. This is how it works, and we're really proud of what we do. I don't think there's enough of that. So if I think to go back to those three things, it's unifying the profession, it's having professional integrity, and it's being showing advocacy for the profession as well. And if we can, as a whole sector, do those things together, we are going to be able to be more of an attractive option for future talent, and we'll see more people coming into the sector, which will keep the sector going for the longer term, and hopefully provide more advice services to consumers in the future.
Brilliant. Well, I take it back. I didn't drop you in it at all. Excellent answer. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Tom. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
You're welcome. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.